Have you ever wondered how much of your pain comes not from what people do to you, but from what you allow? We've all been taught to be tolerant, to keep the peace, to turn the other cheek. But what happens when peacekeeping becomes soul-breaking? When being understanding slowly becomes self-erasure? The truth is, life doesn't just hurt you. It teaches you to hurt yourself through silence, tolerance, and the belief that enduring is noble. But what if I told you that the most dangerous damage doesn't come from cruelty? It comes from the quiet habit of letting it slide. Every time you ignore a red flag, you teach your heart that its voice doesn't matter. Every time you excuse bad behavior, you whisper to yourself that your feelings are negotiable. And every time you stay silent to avoid conflict, you invite chaos to live rent-free in your mind. Tolerating the unacceptable isn't compassion. It's self-abandonment. And the longer you do it, the deeper the wound. It starts subtly. Overlooking a rude comment, brushing off a dismissive tone, swallowing your words so they don't get hurt. But over time, it builds. It creates a version of you that flinches at confrontation, doubts your own needs, and starts to believe that maybe this is just how life is. Maybe love always hurts. Maybe respect is earned through endurance. Maybe your role is to be the bigger person, no matter how small it makes you feel. That lie has broken more people than cruelty ever has. You see, there is a hidden cost to what you tolerate. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. But it drains you. It eats at your confidence, your joy, your trust in yourself, and slowly you begin to disappear behind a mask of, "I'm fine." You become a ghost in your own life, present but unprotected, smiling but silently suffocating. And the worst part? The world will not stop to rescue you from this, because people learn how to treat you based on what you allow. If you accept disrespect, they'll give you more of it. If you make excuses for cruelty, they'll never apologize. And if you never draw the line, they'll never know it exists. This isn't about revenge or bitterness. It's about reclaiming your worth. It's about understanding that self-respect is not earned through pain. It's protected through boundaries. You don't become stronger by enduring what destroys you. You become stronger by choosing what you'll no longer allow. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your patience if it costs you your peace. And you absolutely don't owe loyalty to people who confuse love with control, kindness with weakness, or presence with permission. The day you stop tolerating the unacceptable is the day your life starts to change. Your mind clears. Your energy shifts. You start attracting people who see your boundaries not as walls, but as standards. You start building a world where your peace is non-negotiable, where your heart is not a playground for someone else's issues, and where your silence is no longer a survival strategy, it's a choice you use to protect your power. But this transformation begins with one decision: to stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. Because that's what tolerance becomes when it crosses the line. It becomes self-betrayal. And no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you can endure, the truth is, when you betray yourself long enough, you forget who you are. You become someone else's version of you. Smaller, quieter, nicer, until the real you is buried beneath years of "I'll let it go." You don't deserve that. You never did. This isn't just about removing toxic people, it's about removing toxic permission, the kind that tells you it's okay to be second, the kind that tells you to be mature while others stay reckless, the kind that punishes you for having needs. You were not born to shrink so others can feel tall. You were not meant to bleed silently while they thrive off your silence. And you were never created to tolerate pain in the name of love, family, or friendship. This message is not just a wake-up call, it's a mirror, it's a challenge. Because by the end of this, you won't just know what not to tolerate, you'll finally understand why. Because your peace is sacred, your time is priceless, and your soul is not a battlefield. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to demand better, not just from others, but from yourself. Stay with this, because the path to reclaiming your power starts with naming what breaks it. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. The truth? It's not the world that hurts you most. It's what you let stay. And once you stop letting it stay, everything begins to change. The moment you decide that your peace is no longer up for negotiation, something inside you shifts. You stop looking for validation in places that only give you wounds. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. And most importantly, you stop making room for disrespect, no matter how subtle, no matter how familiar. Because disrespect isn't just about harsh words or loud insults. It's often quiet, casual, dismissive. It hides in the eye rolls, the interruptions, the jokes at your expense that are always just kidding. But make no mistake, disrespect is never harmless. It chips away at your identity, one interaction at a time. When someone disrespects you, they're not just testing your patience. They're testing your standards. They're checking to see what you'll accept, how much of yourself you're willing to abandon just to keep the peace. And the more you let it go, the more they believe it's okay. The truth is, people don't stop crossing lines out of kindness. They stop because they hit a boundary, a firm one that says, I am not available for this. I am not your emotional punching bag. I am not here to make you feel superior by staying small. This is where your power begins, not in controlling others, but in mastering what you allow. Disrespect teaches your subconscious that your voice doesn't matter, that your time can be interrupted, that your feelings are too much. And if you hear that long enough, you start to believe it. You shrink before you even speak. You apologize for existing. You second-guess your every thought. Not because you're weak, but because someone trained you to think your truth was inconvenient. It's time to unlearn that. Because the moment you start demanding respect, not in words but in energy, everything shifts. People feel it when you stop tolerating nonsense, when your silence is no longer submission but a boundary, when your absence says more than your presence ever did. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. That's knowing that your time is sacred, that your emotions deserve space, that your soul is not a doormat for the emotionally immature. And here's the truth. Most people don't want to admit, some people thrive off disrespecting others. Not because you did something wrong, but because it makes them feel powerful. Because diminishing you fills a void inside them. Because they confuse dominance with strength. But you are not here to be someone's emotional stepping stone. You are here to rise, and sometimes that means rising alone. Because being alone with dignity is always better than being surrounded with disrespect. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Every time you ignore a disrespectful comment, you tell them it's okay to speak to you that way. Every time you laugh off something that hurt you, you tell them your pain is a joke. And every time you stay silent when your heart is screaming, you abandon yourself just to stay accepted. But the truth is, acceptance at the cost of self-respect is not acceptance. It's a slow form of self-destruction. You have the right to walk away mid-conversation if someone starts tearing you down. You have the right to stop explaining yourself to people who only want to argue. You have the right to create space from anyone who thinks your boundaries are negotiable. That's not rudeness, that's self-preservation. And the more you do it, the more your confidence rebuilds. You begin to recognize your own worth not in how others see you, but in how you refuse to let them misuse you. Respect doesn't always start with others. It starts with how you treat yourself when no one's watching. Do you honor your thoughts? Do you speak with intention or shrink your voice out of fear? Do you surround yourself with people who nourish you or drain you in the name of jokes? You deserve to be around people who don't flinch at your boundaries. People who don't see your self-respect as a threat. People who don't require you to dim your light just so they can feel comfortable. Start honoring your standards, even if it means standing alone for a while. Because the truth is, you'll never attract the respect you deserve while tolerating the disrespect you fear confronting. You are not difficult for having boundaries. You are not dramatic for standing up for yourself. You are not unkind for cutting off disrespect, even when it wears a friendly face. You are simply choosing to no longer be available for anything that makes you feel small, unwanted, or invisible. When you raise your standards, you raise your energy. You stop chasing validation and start attracting alignment. You stop explaining your worth and start embodying it. And that's when everything begins to change. Not because others treat you better, but because you no longer stay where you are treated less than you deserve. That is where your true life begins. Not in tolerance, but in truth. Not in silence, but in self-respect. Not in pleasing others, but in protecting your peace. That's where your power has always been, waiting for you to stop accepting anything less. There's a kind of control that doesn't use chains or shouting. It uses confusion. It whispers instead of yells. It manipulates instead of commands. It twists your thoughts so subtly that you start questioning your own reality. This is emotional manipulation. And unlike open disrespect, it hides behind smiles, behind apologies, behind promises to change that never actually mean to. But the damage it causes is deeper, more silent, more destructive. Because when someone starts to control how you feel, how you think, how you see yourself, they don't just manipulate your emotions. They slowly rewrite your identity. Manipulators don't want to argue. They want to win. And they don't fight with logic. They fight with guilt. They use your empathy as a weapon. They make you feel responsible for their moods, their choices, their reactions. Suddenly, their pain is your fault. Their disappointment is because you weren't enough. And their silence, it's your punishment. Not for something you did, but for daring to have needs, emotions, or boundaries that don't serve them. You begin to live on edge. You filter your words, second-guess your tone, walk through every moment as if stepping on glass. And when they finally explode or withdraw, you blame yourself. That's how deep it goes. You start apologizing for breathing too loudly, for asking too much, for existing in ways that used to feel normal. You tell yourself, maybe I could have said it differently. Maybe if I were more patient. Maybe if I just loved them better. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. It was never about your delivery. It was always about their control. They train you to become afraid of standing up for yourself, because every time you do, there's a consequence. Silence, sulking, sarcasm, withdrawal, accusation. And when that happens enough times, you give up. You learn to be quiet, agreeable, compliant, not because it's who you are, but because it's what keeps the peace. But peace built on suppression is not peace. It's a prison. And no matter how gentle the manipulation may seem, it steals your freedom just the same. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to keep shrinking to protect their comfort. You don't have to keep fixing what you didn't break. You have the right to say, that's not okay. You have the right to express how you feel without being made to feel guilty for it. You have the right to emotional clarity, to relationships where you're not always the one bending, breaking, or bleeding to make it work. The moment you start trusting your own voice again, the fog begins to lift. You start recognizing the patterns, the backhanded compliments. The sudden mood shifts when you try to express yourself. The way they play victim whenever you bring up a valid concern. And most of all, the way they twist your words until you're the villain in your own story. That clarity is painful, but it's power. Because when you finally see the truth, you can no longer unsee it. And once you see it, you can stop explaining yourself to people who only listen to twist, deny, and deflect. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining things. You are not difficult for wanting honesty, respect, and mutual understanding. You're just finally waking up from a lie someone needed you to believe in order to keep control. And now that you're awake, you have a choice. You can keep dancing around their moods, tiptoeing through conversations, breaking your back to keep the connection. Or you can step back, breathe, and remind yourself that love, real love, does not require confusion, fear, or the loss of your self-worth. Manipulators don't need you to be weak. They just need you to doubt your strength, because doubt is the leash that keeps you tethered to their power. But strength isn't loud, it's not angry, it's clear. It's the decision to walk away from what distorts your truth. It's the moment you stop begging to be understood and start choosing peace over persuasion. It's not your job to convince someone to treat you right. It's your responsibility to treat yourself right and remove yourself from anything that makes you forget your value. Protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. Protect your clarity like your soul depends on it, because it does. Protect your self-respect like your future depends on it, because it does. Manipulation thrives in confusion, but the moment you get clear on who you are, what you deserve, and what you'll never allow again, the spell breaks. The cycle ends, and your healing begins. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to explain yourself endlessly. You just have to stop participating. That's how you win. That's how you reclaim your power. Not by fixing the manipulator, but by fixing the part of you that thought you had to earn love through suffering. You were never too much. You were just too awake to keep being controlled. And now that you know better, you are allowed to choose better. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. Once you begin breaking free from manipulation, something unexpected often happens. You start hearing another voice, the one you've absorbed over time. The one that criticizes you not from the outside, but from within. It tells you you're not good enough, that you'll never measure up, that everything you do is wrong. That voice is the echo of constant criticism, and it's not yours. It's the voice of someone who convinced you their opinion was truth and their judgment was love. Constant criticism is not feedback. It's not guidance. It's control wrapped in concern. It disguises itself as help, but its real purpose is to chip away at your confidence until all you're left with is doubt. It lives in relationships, homes, and even workplaces, anywhere someone feels the need to elevate themselves by shrinking you. And if it starts early enough or lasts long enough, you begin to internalize it. You stop questioning the cruelty and start questioning your own worth. You become your own critic, your own oppressor, your own worst enemy. Criticism that never lifts, never encourages, never acknowledges your effort is not helping you grow. It's keeping you small. It trains your nervous system to live in fear of being wrong. You begin walking through life on edge, afraid to try, afraid to speak, afraid to show up fully, because you've been conditioned to expect that whatever you do will never be enough. You might succeed, but you won't feel it. You might be loved, but you won't believe it. That's what constant criticism does. It separates you from your accomplishments, from your identity, from your truth. The real tragedy isn't that someone else criticized you. It's that, over time, you started doing it to yourself. That's how deep the damage runs. You catch yourself before others do. You silence yourself before others can disapprove. You analyze every move, every word, every flaw until you forget that you're human. You treat perfection not as a goal but as a requirement. And you end each day feeling like you failed, not because you didn't try, but because someone once taught you that trying isn't enough. But here's what you need to remember. No one gets to define your worth but you. The way someone else talks to you is a reflection of their own chaos, not a verdict on your character. Their criticism is an insight, it's projection, and you don't have to absorb it. You don't have to carry their broken lens through your life. You can choose right now to separate your identity from their insecurities. You can start rebuilding the voice inside you, one truth at a time. That inner voice, the one you use to speak to yourself, should be your biggest supporter, not your biggest critic. It should guide you, not shame you, empower you, not punish you. And if it doesn't, it's time to rewrite it. Because the world will always have opinions, but your peace begins when you stop giving them permission to shape your self-worth. Start paying attention to how people speak to you when you're vulnerable, when you fail, when you struggle. That's when their true character shows. If their response is always criticism, mockery, or silence, then that's not care, it's control. You deserve to be corrected with compassion, not contempt. You deserve feedback that helps you rise, not fear that keeps you small. And you absolutely deserve people who speak to you with the same respect they demand in return. You are allowed to protect your energy from constant critics, even if they are people close to you. You don't owe access to anyone who confuses tearing you down with making you better. You don't have to engage. You don't have to explain. You don't even have to be polite. You simply need to choose yourself. Because every time you let someone talk to you like you're nothing, a piece of you starts to believe it. And every time you walk away from that, a piece of you begins to heal. This is your moment to silence the lies, to stop measuring your worth by someone else's standards, to stop waiting for someone to say you're enough and start saying it to yourself. Because you are. You are not too much. You are not too loud, too emotional, too complicated. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, and you're still becoming more. And you don't need to shrink for anyone to feel comfortable around you. Let this be the season you reclaim your voice, not the one they gave you, but the one they tried to bury. Let it be the moment you start replacing every cruel word you heard with truth, strength, and clarity. Because the most powerful thing you can ever do is believe in yourself louder than they ever criticized you. And once you start doing that, they lose their power. Their voice fades. Yours rises. And that is how you begin again. Not as the version they crushed, but as the version you were always meant to be. Once you begin to rebuild your inner voice, the next challenge becomes protecting it. And nothing threatens that voice more than people who violate your boundaries. Not in violent ways, not in obvious ways, but in the subtle, constant dismissal of your no. People who hear your limits and push past them anyway. People who smile as they cross lines they were never invited to. That behavior is not just disrespect, it's a direct attack on your right to exist as a whole autonomous person. Because when someone refuses to honor your boundaries, what they're really saying is, my comfort matters more than your consent. There's a dangerous lie society teaches, especially to those who are empathetic, nurturing, or emotionally aware, that setting boundaries is cold, selfish, or rude. That saying no makes you difficult. That protecting your peace means you're pushing people away. But the truth is, boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. They don't shut everyone out. They keep the wrong energy from walking in and destroying what you're trying to build inside. Boundaries are an act of love toward yourself. They're the line where your identity ends and someone else's expectations begin. And if you don't define that line, someone else will. They'll redefine you as whatever suits them best. Accessible, agreeable, compliant. You'll become a version of yourself that exists not for your own growth, but for their convenience. And before you know it, you're saying yes when you want to scream no. You're showing up for people who never show up for you. You're bending, breaking, and burning out to meet the needs of those who don't even pause to ask how you're doing. It doesn't have to be that way. You're allowed to draw a line. You're allowed to protect your time, your space, your energy. You're allowed to make decisions that honor your values, not just someone else's demands. And when someone refuses to respect that, it's not your responsibility to explain further. It's your responsibility to enforce it. Because every time you let someone ignore your boundary, you send a message to yourself, I don't matter enough. And that message quietly erodes your confidence from the inside out. The people who truly care about you will not be offended by your boundaries. They'll be grateful for your honesty. Because boundaries don't destroy relationships, they reveal them. When you start saying no to things that drain you, the right people will understand. And the wrong people, they'll react. They'll accuse you of changing. They'll try to guilt you, shame you, remind you of everything they've done for you. But that's not love. That's leverage. And anyone who uses guilt to get access to you never valued you in the first place. They only valued what you gave them. Start paying attention to who respects your no, who stops when you ask for space, who listens when you say, I'm not available for that right now. Because those are the ones who see you, not as a tool, not as a source of endless emotional labor, but as a human being with needs, limits, and value. That kind of respect is rare. But it starts with how you treat yourself. It starts with you believing that your boundaries are not optional, that your limits are not up for discussion, that you don't owe anyone access to you just because they expect it. If someone gets angry when you set a boundary, that's proof the boundary was necessary. And if they walk away because you stopped making yourself smaller for them, let them. What's leaving your life is not love. It's a test you finally passed. You're not here to be easy to use. You're here to live in alignment. And alignment only comes when you stop abandoning yourself for the sake of being liked, included, or accepted. Every time you say no to what harms you, you say yes to what heals you. Every time you walk away from disrespect, you step closer to self-respect. And every time you enforce a boundary, you reclaim a piece of your identity that someone else tried to steal. That is not weakness. That is power. And it's a kind of power that doesn't need to scream or threaten. It simply stands firm, rooted in the truth, I belong to myself now. You don't have to be available to everyone. You don't have to explain every decision. You don't have to feel guilty for protecting your peace. That guilt was planted by people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Let it go. Choose yourself. Honor your limits. And never apologize for needing space to breathe, grow, and become who you were always meant to be. Because the version of you that no longer tolerates boundary violations, that version is unstoppable. That version doesn't break when people walk away. That version doesn't flinch when faced with manipulation. That version is grounded, powerful, and free. And that version is already within you, waiting for permission to rise. The moment you start honoring your boundaries, something even more powerful begins to unfold. You start seeing patterns you once excused. You begin recognizing the one-sided relationships that drained you while disguising themselves as love. You stop mistaking obligation for loyalty, and suddenly the fog lifts, because real connection is never built on imbalance. Yet for too long, you've been conditioned to carry relationships where the weight was never shared, where giving became your identity and receiving became a distant dream. You know the ones, the people who always expect you to show up, even when they're never there when you need them. The ones who only reach out when they need something, who celebrate your silence because it means you're not asking for anything back. These relationships don't just take your time, they take your self-worth. Because over time, you begin to feel guilty for needing. You start believing that being low maintenance, selfless, and endlessly available makes you worthy of love. But love that thrives on your silence is not love. It's dependence. One-sided relationships are easy to miss because they're often disguised by history. You tell yourself, we've been through so much. You rationalize the imbalance with memories, shared moments, and empty promises of change. But no matter how much you pour, the cup never fills. And deep down, you know it. You feel it in the exhaustion that has no name, in the resentment you keep swallowing, in the conversations where you talk yourself into staying. Again, the hardest truth to accept is that some people only love you as long as you're convenient, as long as you don't ask for too much, as long as you remain the helper, the fixer, the silent supporter. But the moment you set a boundary, the moment you say, I need you to, the moment you step out of their emotional shadow, they disappear. Not because you were wrong to ask, but because your growth threatened the dynamic they depended on. This is the cost of emotional imbalance. It teaches you to overfunction while others underperform. It convinces you that their bare minimum is enough, while you exhaust yourself trying to hold the entire connection together. But a relationship that requires you to be exhausted to keep it alive is already dead. You're not supposed to be constantly proving your value. You're not supposed to be earning love through self-sacrifice. The right people don't make you beg for presents. They don't disappear when you need support. They don't punish you for asking to be seen. You deserve reciprocity. Not perfection, not constant agreement, but the simple, sacred act of mutual effort. You deserve to be heard when you speak, cared for when you're down, and appreciated without having to perform for it. You deserve people who remember your value even when you're not giving. Because your worth doesn't come from what you do for others, it comes from who you are when you're no longer carrying them on your back. Let go of the need to be everything for everyone. Let go of the fear that walking away from imbalance means you're selfish. Choosing yourself in a relationship that only takes is not betrayal. It's self-respect. And the people who truly love you will never require you to abandon yourself to keep them. They'll meet you where you are. They'll match your effort. They'll make space for your needs without keeping score. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong people. You're not difficult to love. You're just tired of giving love without being loved in return. You're not broken. You're just done being used. That exhaustion you feel is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's your heart telling you that what you've accepted is no longer aligned with who you're becoming. Let that be your turning point. Stop explaining your standards to people who benefit from your silence. Stop proving your loyalty to people who have never shown up for you. Stop shrinking your needs to fit someone else's comfort zone. You were not born to be half-loved. You were not made to be a background character in someone else's life while yours remains on pause. This is your reminder. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to leave spaces that make you feel unseen, because love should never feel like labor. Support should never feel one-sided. And presence should never feel conditional. What you allow continues. But what you walk away from frees you. And every time you choose reciprocity over resentment, you build a life that feeds your soul instead of draining it. Every time you say, I deserve more, and actually act on it, you break a cycle. You reset your standard. You teach yourself that you are worthy, not because of what you offer, but because of what you no longer accept. That's the kind of love that changes everything. The kind that starts with you. The kind that says, I will no longer beg to be valued. I will no longer prove I'm enough. I will no longer pour into the empty, hoping it becomes full. I choose mutual energy. I choose emotional balance. I choose me. When you finally stop pouring into what doesn't pour back, you begin to reclaim something even more sacred than peace, your trust in yourself. That trust is not built in grand moments. It's forged in the small, everyday decisions where you choose your dignity over dysfunction. It's restored when you stop betraying your instincts to protect someone else's ego. But there is one force that tears at this trust more than almost anything else: betrayal. Not once, not in passing, but repeated, unapologetic, soul-bruising betrayal that's disguised as love. The kind that makes you question your worth, your judgment, your reality. Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. In fact, it almost never does. It comes from those who swore to protect you. It comes in the form of broken promises, secret lies, double standards, and lies spoken with a straight face. And the most painful part isn't what they did, it's how you keep trying to forgive it, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'll finally change. But patterns don't lie. People who betray you once may make a mistake. People who do it again and again are showing you exactly who they are. And the longer you stay, the more you lose pieces of yourself just to hold on to something that's already broken. There's a silent war that happens inside a person who keeps forgiving betrayal. On the outside, you smile, you explain, you say things like nobody's perfect and everyone makes mistakes. But on the inside, you're bleeding. You're tired. You're asking yourself how many chances are too many. You're questioning if love really means enduring the same heartbreak on repeat. And worst of all, you're starting to believe that this is the best you'll ever get. But love is not meant to destroy your self-trust. It's not supposed to make you feel like you're the only one fighting. Real love doesn't require you to ignore red flags just to keep the peace. It doesn't ask you to silence your voice, your gut, your truth in exchange for temporary closeness, and it sure as hell doesn't expect you to keep tolerating betrayal under the illusion of loyalty. There comes a point when forgiveness stops being healing and starts becoming self-destruction. When you start using it as a reason to stay silent, to stop asking questions, to pretend things are okay when deep down you know they're not. That's not forgiveness. It's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of accepting the truth that they're not who you hoped they were. But the truth doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It waits. And the longer you wait with it, the heavier it becomes. You can't heal in a place that keeps cutting you. You can't grow in an environment where lies are louder than love. And you cannot trust yourself when you keep gaslighting your own heart to protect someone who keeps choosing betrayal. That's what repeated hurt does. It teaches you to question your own reality. And the more you accept it, the more you start to doubt the very instincts that once kept you safe. But here's your power, The moment you stop needing their apology to move on, you start healing. The moment you stop waiting for them to become someone they're not, you free yourself. You stop being a prisoner of potential and start being the protector of your peace. You no longer need closure from the person who kept the door open to lies. You become your own closure, your own strength, your own beginning. Walking away from repeated betrayal isn't weakness, it's the ultimate act of self-respect. It means you've finally chosen truth over illusion. It means you're done rewriting history just to justify someone's behavior. It means you're brave enough to stand in the wreckage and say, "This ends with me." That kind of decision doesn't come easy, but it changes everything. You are allowed to outgrow the people who refuse to grow with you. You are allowed to stop making excuses for people who keep proving they don't care. You are allowed to stop explaining your pain to someone committed to causing it. That's not being heartless. That's finally having a heart for yourself. Not everyone deserves access to the most vulnerable parts of you. Not everyone who says "I love you" means it in action. And not everyone who hurts you is sorry. They're just sorry you caught them. Pay attention to the pattern, not the promise. Watch what they do when they think you're not watching. And remember this, someone who keeps betraying your trust is not sorry. They're just comfortable. But you don't have to be. You don't have to keep sitting at the table where your truth is silenced. You don't have to keep swallowing pain just to keep someone else fed. You don't have to sacrifice your peace to keep someone from feeling the consequences of their actions. You have the right to leave, to close the chapter, to stop hoping the next time will be different, because it won't be. But you can be. You can be the one who finally says, "No more." The one who chooses freedom over familiarity. The one who decides that being alone is far better than being with someone who makes you feel alone even when they're standing right next to you. You can be the one who reclaims your voice, your value, your future. And the moment you do, the betrayal loses its power. It no longer defines you. It no longer controls you. It simply becomes what it always was. A lesson. One that taught you how to stop settling for pain and start rising into power. One that reminded you you were never meant to tolerate what breaks your soul. You were meant to rise above it, stronger than ever, finally whole. When you finally stop tolerating betrayal, something profound happens. You stop making excuses for people's broken character. You stop calling cruelty a bad day. You stop labeling selfishness as just their personality. You stop normalizing behavior that chips away at your sense of self. Because one of the most dangerous things you can ever tolerate is chronic selfishness. Disguised as charm, masked as confidence, or worse, justified as ambition. This kind of selfishness doesn't shout. It drains, slowly, quietly, completely. Selfish people don't need to raise their voices to take control. They simply make everything about them. Every conversation, every decision, every moment must orbit around their wants, their needs, their timing. And you become an accessory to their comfort. You're expected to adjust, to wait, to be flexible, but never expect the same in return. You bend your schedule, your values, your energy to accommodate them. And when you ask for even the smallest consideration, you're met with silence, irritation, or emotional withdrawal. You start to feel like you're asking for too much. You start minimizing your needs to avoid conflict. You convince yourself that you should be more patient, more understanding, more giving. But giving becomes a trap when it's never reciprocated. And patience becomes a prison when you're the only one waiting to be seen, heard, and valued. The danger of selfishness is that it doesn't always feel like abuse. It often feels like being invisible. You don't always cry, you go numb. You don't always fight, you disconnect. You tell yourself this is just how things are, that maybe your standards are too high, that maybe if you just gave more, they'd finally give back. But deep down, a part of you knows the truth. Selfish people don't change because they never have to. As long as you keep giving without boundaries, they'll keep taking without remorse. That's what makes selfishness so dangerous. It conditions you to believe that love must hurt, that relationships require sacrifice, and that your voice is always secondary. But love that costs you your self-respect is not love. It's dependency wrapped in manipulation. It's comfort built on your silence. It's affection that only flows when they get what they want. And it's a cycle that doesn't break until you decide to stop feeding it. You are not selfish for wanting mutual effort. You are not wrong for needing reciprocity. You are not demanding for asking for emotional presence, consistent support, or basic respect. You are human, and humans need more than crumbs to thrive. You deserve a connection that doesn't collapse the moment you stop giving everything. You deserve to feel heard without shouting. You deserve to feel chosen without having to prove your worth again and again. When someone's selfishness becomes a pattern, it becomes a choice. And their choice to disregard your needs cannot be healed by your love. It can only be exposed by your boundaries. You can't fix someone who benefits from staying the same. You can only choose whether or not to keep handing your energy to someone who sees your generosity as their entitlement. The most powerful thing you can ever do is stop over-functioning in relationships that underserve your soul. The moment you stop prioritizing people who only prioritize themselves, you reclaim space for the kind of love that honors your heart, not just your utility. And yes, it will feel unfamiliar. It might feel lonely, but that loneliness is a bridge, not a destination. It's the place where you finally learn the difference between attention and intention, between someone needing you and someone actually valuing you. You don't owe anyone your emotional labor. You don't have to carry the weight of their indifference. And you absolutely don't have to sacrifice your needs to protect their comfort. The right people won't see your boundaries as an inconvenience. They'll see them as clarity. They won't disappear when you stop overgiving. They'll show up more, because real connection doesn't require one person to disappear for the other to shine. You have the right to say, I will no longer participate in relationships where I am the only one showing up. You have the right to stop making room for people who never consider your needs until it threatens their convenience. You have the right to put yourself first, not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation, because you are not here to be drained. You are not here to be used. You are here to grow, to love deeply, and to be met with the same energy you give so freely. And once you decide that your time, energy, and heart are not available to those who only think of themselves, something radical happens. You attract peace. You make space for alignment. You begin to walk lighter, breathe deeper, and live stronger. Because you are no longer shrinking to fit inside someone else's limited capacity to care. That is your liberation. The moment you stop accepting selfishness, you stop betraying your own soul. And that decision, right there, becomes the beginning of everything new, everything real, everything worthy of the version of you that no longer tolerates being treated like an afterthought. You are not optional. You are not disposable. You are not here to carry others at the expense of your own becoming. You are here to rise, and you will.